Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I want to welcome all of you to our webinar on setting up an online practice, the technical know-how, brought to you by the Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists. My name is Bharat Iyer, and I'll be your host for this webinar. It's great to see members of IACP and mental health professionals in general who have joined us here today. Now, before I introduce the speaker today, we have a few words from Dr. Manoj Bajaj, Honorable General Secretary of the Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists. Dr. Manoj, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, all of you. I'm Dr. Manoj on behalf of Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists. As a Honorable General Secretary, I welcome you all in this webinar. In fact, you all are aware that we have started online webinar series for our members and clinical psychologists and mental health professionals in the country. So this is the third in sequence, and I welcome you all in this important topic, which is going to be presented by our President-elect, Dr. Dhirendra, and he is expert in the technical aspects of setting of these practice online. Apart from that, recently we have issued one statement, press release from our IACP. You may be aware about it, that Suicide Prevention Helpline, which basically also a component of our main helpline, which we have released recently in connection with that previously, which we started for COVID-19 issues. And suicide and depression issues are also increasing day by day, as you have seen in media reports. So this Paramars helpline also will cater to the aspects of general public in which the people used to have any suicidal ideation or suicidal thinking. They can take services of that, since you all are aware that only mental health professional team is part of these services in which they are trained enough to deal with certain situations. So our helpline is number is 8047192224. So we will be starting soon with the presentation. Our expert is very kind enough to part of this, and we have discussed and deliberated it that in connection that we will be having one online webinar from our executive council also. So simultaneously we have thought of that we will be doing sort of activities of under the aegis of IACP, and one webinar will be conducted by EC members, and the next webinar will be the experts members of IACP alternatively. So I welcome you all once again, and have a great and academically enriching and comfortable start. Yeah, I hand over to Bharat.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj, and welcome, Dr. Kalpana. Dr. Kalpana, do you have any words for us before we begin?
I think Dr. Manoj might have covered. I'm just little 5 minutes late, but I think it's a very good initiative. And today's topic is of, utmost relevance, because it is a thing which is we have gone totally virtual in today's time, and based on the pandemic COVID-19. So I think Dr. Dhirendra has been managing our helpline, and he is the one who's initiated it. And we had a very good review of the helpline. In fact, based on that, many people approached us. So he's the right person to speak on the topic. Over to Dr. Dhirendra Kumar.
Thank you, President ma'am, and thank you, Manoj. And very good afternoon to all. And let's start with the presentation.
Before we begin, let me just start with actually introducing Dr. Dhirendra for those of us who are joining outside the IACP family. Dr. Dhirendra Kumar is a gold medalist clinical and child psychologist. He is the founder and director of Sai India and LRS World College. He is the president-elect of the Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists and chairperson of the Committee on Telecounseling Practice Guidelines. He was instrumental in setting up the mental health support helpline in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. He's also been consulted as an expert by different media organizations such as NDTV, Times of India, Indian Express, and so on. Dr. Dhirendra, thank you so much for joining us here today. Unfortunately, our second speaker, Ms. Shweta, could not join due to some unavoidable circumstances. So we will have a separate session in the future for that. So Dr. Dharendra will be the sole speaker today. So, sir, I request you to please take over.
Thank you, Bharat. So as the first slide goes, so you can see that we are going to present the things on setting up an online practice technical know-how. And in this, we will be mainly covering the video-based consultations because that is the closest way of consulting to the in-person counseling or psychotherapy. So the basic question is, how do you eat an elephant? And there's a very simple answer to it. One bite at a time. So if you are changing to online practice or if you are going for any new technology, then you cannot master that technology in one day. It takes time. So you have to do the things at a pace that is suitable for you. So you do not need to follow the technology. You have to master it bit by bit. And if you see, then about the technology, initially email was new to the people, desktops were new to the people, laptops were new to the people, and then the gadgets that were new to the people, and we have slowly mastered it. So we'll be able to master this domain also. So what we'll be covering in this talk, in the first part, we'll be covering setting up the office and then eye contact, because this is one of the most crucial things in video consultations. In topic 2, we'll be covering hardware requirements, software platforms, and then internet requirements. In third part, we'll be covering the data handling. So when you are setting up the office or the room, then there are some things that you do for your impersonal kind of things also. Like your office should be minimalist. You should not put many personal things in your office or the counseling room. So all those things apply to this also. Now, there are few things that are specific to the online counseling setup or your online office that you have to pay special attention to. So first thing is what is visible through the webcam. Usually we see what we are able to see, but we are not able to see what will go behind the webcam. Like what kind of pictures are there, what kind of books are there, what kind of photographs we have there. So the simplest rule is minimum the better. Also review what is around you that can compete for your attention or can make noise. So there might be few things on your table, like there might be some papers that may make some noise and that may go into your microphone, and then it can distract your client. Keep the chamber silent. You can put a board or a plate outside your chamber that please keep silence. Do not disturb. Session is in the progress. So these kind of things you can do, and you can inform your family members if you are operating from your home that you will be in a session and they should not disturb. Then simpler the background, better will be the video quality, and that is same for the clothing. So avoid having patterns in your clothing, and because there might be flickering also because of them. So plain are the best thing. I have also chosen accordingly. So even if you are doing video consultations or you are going into media and having any interview or anything like that, then plain clothes are the best one. Then sit away from the computer so that your chest, shoulders, and head are clearly visible. Because I have seen many people while doing the sessions, they position themselves in a way that only face is visible. Now, when we talk about the clients also, we see their body language and other things. So if you are showing only your face, then the client will not be able to see your body language and other things. So it is important, and you should keep the window of your client just under your camera, and it will give the best angle. We'll discuss it in detail in the eye contact part. Then you should use multiple diffuse light sources. Light should be adequate in the room, because if the light is not adequate, then the picture quality will be affected. The client will not be able to see you properly, and that will affect the quality of the session. You can use diffuse lights many, then you can use small ring light that goes at the back of your webcam. So this way you can do. Other things related to this we will cover in the webcam also, because there we will be talking about the technologies that webcams are using to correct the lights. Then it is important to note Wi-Fi are usually good, but if you want to have a better connection, then hardwire connection to your system is considered to be better than the Wi-Fi. This is very important because if you're going to have a session, then your computer or the laptop should be fresh. So it is always better to have a restart of your system in the morning so that there are no glitches, and do it for the clients also. Ask them that please restart your device once so that there are no problems. And if there are any problems, then you can close your browser and usually it is resolved. Another part that is very important, close all other browsers and tabs and programs on your system, because they will compete for the resources of your device and it may affect the audio and video quality of your interaction with your client. Using headphones reduces feedback and makes for a better audio experience for both participants. This is very important because many a time what we do, we use our system's microphone and audio output, and it might affect, like when the output is coming from the speaker, the microphone may pick it up and there might be echo, that we'll again discussing in the microphone section. Encourage clients to use a computer whenever possible, and if it is not available, then they can use phone or tablet. And if they are using phone or tablet, then it is very important that they use a stand or mount to reduce the motion. Another thing is, otherwise they'll be engaged or the attention will be divided in stabilizing the device that they are having. Then this is one of the most important part, eye contact, that we study in psychotherapy and counseling, and maintaining it in the video medium is also equally important. So human can perceive changes in eye fixation and gaze angle over video. Medium does not curtail our ability to perceive if we are looked at or not. So basically, in simple terms, we can say whether eye contact is made or not, we can perceive in the video medium also. When we place the camera at eye level and your eyes are rotated downward to look at a screen, the angle of our eye rotation is called the gaze angle. And usually the angle should be between 5 to 7 degrees. And if it is between 5 to 7 degrees, then it is usually not perceived by the clients. Another important point in eye contact is rotating one side downward is less noticeable. If you are rotating your eyes towards left or right, it is more noticeable. If you are rotating your eyes upward, then it is more noticeable. But if you rotate your eyes downward, then it is less noticeable. So there have been studies which has shown that clients find it difficult to discriminate between when we are looking at eyes and when we are looking at their mouth. So it highlights this fact. So the rotation toward downwards is more acceptable than the other rotations. Reducing the size of client's image and moving it up is also one of the strategies that reduces the gaze angle. But if you make the image bigger, then we will be able to find out more facial expression and other non-verbal communication cues. So we have to balance the image size for this gaze angle and the other aspects of it. So if the client's eye are 6 inches below the camera, your gaze angle will be 7 degrees. If you are sitting at 4 feet back from the screen. So the simple rule you can see, if we see almost all the laptops, then 6 inches, if you are having a webcam sitting at the top of your laptop, then the middle of the screen would be less than 6 inches in most of the laptops. So you can safely use a laptop if you are sitting at a distance of about 4 meters, and there will not be noticeable change in the gaze. To get your gaze angle below 5 degrees, you need to sit back at 6 feet. So in general, you can use any system at about 4 feet distance. Sometimes clients don't see the camera at eye level and they leave a lot of space on the screen. This is important. We have to tell the clients that in their camera, it should be positioned in a way that there is not much space above their head or the eyes. So that space should be reduced. It will help us in making the better eye contact in the video medium. We can ask them to adjust the camera. Then the most important thing is perceived eye contact is not just an issue of optics or geometry. The way we were saying that if you are at 4 feet and then 6 inches from the top, the eyes are, then gaze angle will be 7 degrees. So it's not all that only. We have discussed even if you're seeing at mouth, then it is considered as you are looking or making eye contact. So the other aspects of your interaction in the therapy or the counseling are also important, because if you are showing some behaviors like you are showing empathy that is related to the eye contact, then there are more chances that people will see that you are making the eye contact. Another technique, simply be empathetic and be caring, because if you are doing these things and these things are associated with better eye contact, then the client will feel that you are making the eye contact. Now, there was one software that right now is not available for download, that is known as Catch Eye software. So this software basically corrects the rotations of the eyes and the gaze angles, but nowadays it is not available. The people who have already downloaded it can use it, and it works with different platforms, like it works with Skype, it works with Zoom. So it is an artificial software way of correcting the things. Then we come to the next part. What are the hardwares that you require? In the first part, there is system. By system, we mean your desktop, your laptop, or your mobile device, or your tablet, whatever you are using. In second part, there are speakers. In third part, there are microphones. And then there is webcam. So in the system, when these are the things that we usually use: computer, laptop, tablets, mobile devices. So the important thing is, in your computer or your laptop, try to have latest operating system. Windows 7 is going to lose support, so at least Windows 8. You should have updated browsers. There are frequent updates by the browsers, so keep updating them. This is important. We'll discuss in data safety and security also. There should be a minimum quad-core processor, i3, i5, or i7, or AMD equivalent. Otherwise, FPS affected. So I should explain this. What is FPS? FPS is frames per second. So when you are having any video call or video consultation, then what your camera does, it takes pictures and then sends those pictures. So in this, how many pictures the camera is taking in a second is important. So if the processor is not good, then the number of pictures taken would be low and the video quality will be affected. Like there may be lag in the motion. Then there should be at least 4 GB RAM. So I'm not going into detailing everything technically. What I have done is I have put the things in a way that you can directly utilize. And SSDs are better than standard hard disks because the rate of transfer of data in SSDs is better. So when you are choosing a device, then these are the basic things you should go. At least Windows 8, minimum quad-core processor. So you can have i3, i5, i7, or AMD equivalent. At least 4 GB RAM should be there. And the SSDs are better. And in addition to that, usually the processor speed should be at least 2 GHz. Then we come to speakers and microphones. Try to avoid using inbuilt speakers and microphones. Using the audio of your device usually causes echo and affects the quality of conversation. So it is always better to use the headphones. Multiple types of microphones are available, like lavalier, condenser, unidirectional, bidirectional, omnidirectional. So I'm not going into the details of all those, though I'm aware of all them. But what you can do, the simplest way is to use the earphones of good quality or headphones with microphones. Earphones look better as headphones give a full center look. So if you see, I'm also using a earphone, and it's simple iPhone earphone, old one, and it works good. Make sure microphone has noise cancellation. This is very important because all the time you won't be having an environment that would be totally free of the noises. So it is important that your microphone has noise cancellation in it. Then we come to the webcam. Whatever your device, there is an excellent webcam that can produce better results than the inbuilt one. So I have seen it for most of the devices, and I have seen it for external webcams. So I can easily vouch for having an extra webcam. I also use one. Have a webcam with about 90-degree field of view. Very narrow field of view appear to have a lack of space. But if you're having a very wide field of view, then much more will be covered. Like in GoToWebinar, we do not have the option of zooming in. Otherwise, for other things, I use the zoom in facility of my webcam so that you look nearer. Have a webcam that have at least 30 frames per second for better video quality. So it is the minimum requirement in today's scenario that you should have at least 30 frames per second. It means your webcam should be capable of taking at least 30 pictures in a second and send them. It should have autofocus and light correction capability that I was discussing. Otherwise, if it does not have autofocus, then you will be doing it manually and it will distract you and it will disturb your client also. And the light correction capability is basically if you are having low lights, then software automatically corrects it. So while buying the webcam, see for these. Logitech and Microsoft webcams are good. I personally prefer Logitech because I have compared and I have seen usually Logitech is excelling in webcam fields. Now we talk about the platforms. The platforms are by through which we'll be connecting with the clients. So these are the software through which we'll be connecting with the clients. Here I have used a slide from TerraSoft, and it shows what are the things that you can do with the software. Because there are ways you can separately book an appointment, you can plan it, you can use a video platform, then you can do the billing. So if you see in TerraSoft, they have combined appointment scheduling, onboarding patients, there are few assessments also, you can take progress notes, you can make discharge summary, and you can do the billing collection also. I have put this slide in the first place because it is one of the platforms that is specifically developed for mental health. And it has India development and support system. It is HIPAA compliant. HIPAA is very important in US, and basically it ensures that we are maintaining the minimum security and other standards in the technology. But there is no specific demands from Indian government to be HIPAA compliant, so that you have to see, but try to find out the systems that are secure, that are encrypted for your own safety. This platform is especially for mental health, and others in India are telemedicine platforms, or those are not very comprehensive. There are other softwares also. If we see in US, then there's VT Connect. It is secure, simple, affordable. It is also HIPAA compliant. It also have the capabilities that we were discussing in the TerraSoft. Then there is payment integration. You can use e-signature, like you do not have to sign the form and then scan it and send it. You can put e-signatures. and there is encrypted private messaging, robust reporting. So all these things are there in vConnect also. Terrasoft I had put first because of the being Indian. Then there is Doxy.me. It is also one of the most popular things, and it is in telehealth. So I'll just go through because all of them are nearly same. Then there is VC. It is also one of the largest telemedicine platform, and it is one of the oldest also, and people are familiar with it. Then there is TheraLink. Then there is vCounsel. Now, before going to internet, I would like to discuss about the platforms that we are mostly using in India. Like we are using Zoom, that we are using Skype, we are using Google Meet, we are using this Microsoft Teams. So earlier there were concerns related to security, but there is a provision in Zoom, Meet or Skype, whatever it is. We can sign an agreement that is known as BAA agreement, Business Associate Agreement, and in that we can have a commitment from their side that they will be complying with the HIPAA standards. So though it is not necessary as per Indian norms, it is better that you have a system that is secure and safe, because the client data will be traveling through these softwares or systems. Then we come to internet. All of us know how to use internet, but there are two requirements of internet. One is that there should be good speed, and number two, it should be consistent. It should not be like speed is going down in between. Now you can find out whether your internet system is sufficient or not. So there are a few things that we can see in it. This I discussed Wi-Fi works good, but wired connection is found to be better. Now, how you can check the internet speed? So I have put a link here. You can use this when we'll be sharing the video later on. Or there's a simple way. You just go to the Google, type internet speed test. In the search results, there will be a blue button, and it will say run speed test. You just click it and wait for some time, and it will give you the download and upload speed. So for basic understanding, download speed is if a video is coming from other side towards your side, then it will use the download speed. And if your video is uploaded into the system and then it will go to the client side, then for that you need upload speed. For one-on-one video calling on Zoom, what are the requirements that you can match with the things that we discussed in internet speed test? So you need at least 600 kbps. So these are the ways of measuring the speed of the internet. So 600 kbps is less than 1 mbps. It is for high quality video, but if you are going into HD video quality, so here you are seeing 720p. So I'm not going into all these details, but you can simply say that if the speed is 1.2 mbps, then it is good for high definition video. And if you want the best quality in it, that is again HD, then you need 1.8 mbps, and it is like this. It is up and down both. I have written it here. It is for receiving and it is for sending. But if you are going for group video call, like you are having a session related to marital issues or family therapy, then you will need a group video calling, and the speeds will be higher. So 800 kbps to 1 mbps for high quality. Earlier it was 600. And then if you're going for HD 720p, then it would be 1.5. And if you are going for 180 HD, it is rather better quality, then it would be 2.5 mbps down and 1.3 mbps again for sending. So these are the requirements, and you can match it with the internet speed that you are getting in your internet. So these are for Zoom, but for other platforms also these would be the similar. For some platforms it might be a bit higher. So you can check with the platform what kind of speeds are required. Then comes the next part, that is data handling, security or protection. This is very important because this is one of the things in which most of us are lacking as professionals, because we are not technology experts. But we can learn these things and we can implement. There is no rocket science in it. Even if we are not engaged in online therapy or counseling, we will be using technology for collecting and storing client data. Like clients will be contacting us through emails for scheduling the appointments and other things. Privacy and confidentiality of that data is our responsibility. It is our responsibility in-person counseling also, or in-personal therapy also. Similarly, it is our responsibility in online setup also. Data security has to be maintained for both the things. Number one, when it is stored and when it is in transit. Like in transit, the way we were talking about in video conference or the video consultation, our video is going from our side to client side, so data is transmitted. Similarly, from client side, the data is transmitted towards our side. Similarly, in the email, the data is transmitted from client to us or us to client, and then it is stored in our systems. Now we'll discuss what measures you can take to secure the data. So in the first part, we will be discussing about the email. That is one of the most common things that most of us are using. So email account is a potential treasure trove of information to someone who gets access to it, because there are so many things that we are having in email. We are having bank statements, we are having communication with the clients, we are having other things also. And there is one more thing that is important. So like if you have a bank account or you are having an account on a video consultation platform, then usually the password reset requests are sent to our emails. So if someone goes into our account, they can easily use the email address to trigger password reset for your online accounts. And to prevent against it, your email account should have a strong password. And some services also include two-step verification. There are some emails like Hushmail, they are quite secure. Now, most of us are using Gmail, so I want to take it step by step. So I would discuss few things about Gmail. And before that, I'll discuss something about the passwords. So we should set the strong passwords, whether it's cell phone, laptop, tablet, desktop, whatever it is, you should set a strong passwords. And for that, what we can do, we can mix the characters. There are three main things, like there are alphabets, there are numbers, and there are symbols. So we should use a combination of alphabets, numbers, and the symbols. And in alphabets also, what you can do, you can use some of them in small case, some of them in capital case or the upper case. So it becomes difficult for somebody to decipher your code. Some people use their date of birth, some people use their first alphabet of their names or a part of their surname. So these are the things that we should usually avoid because these can be easily guessed. It is also important to use a different password for every website or app to which you register, because what many people are doing, we have seen that when they register on the platforms, they use the password of their email as the password of that platform. Like in many cases, they have same password for their email and they have same password for their bank website. Consider using a password manager. There are some password managers like 1Password that you can use. change your password at least every 3 months. And nowadays, if you see, banks are forcing you to do that. Now comes the two-step verification. So what is two-step verification? Like if you are logging into your bank and then you are making a transaction, then what does the bank do? They send you an OTP on your mobile, and then you put that OTP and then you can make the transaction. In a similar way, what the banks do, like if you are accessing your online banking from a system that you have not earlier used, then again they'll send you an OTP that you have to enter. After entering your password, then only you will get the access to your account. So it is two-step verification. So it is a second layer of protection. So it's not there in all emails, but if you see Gmail, it's already there. So it has two-step verification for logging. So there are a few ways by which you can do it. One of them is you can have some credential already that you can log in some place, and then you can use them as second step of verification. And another way is you can activate the login. Now there are some security features that are there in Gmail that people are not usually using that I would like to highlight. So you can set, if you are sending an email to your client or you are sending an email to anybody else and you want to make it secure. So what you can do, you can decide after how much time this email will be deleted from the Gmail servers. Means this email will not be available to you, this email will not be available to the client after a certain period of time. It has a provision of second layer of authentication. When you use the two-step verification in login in Gmail, now there is two-step of the second layer of authentication in the email. If you are sending an email to somebody, so what you can do, you can put their number in that, in the secure mail. And when you put the number in that email, the mobile number of the person who will be receiving the email, when that person open the email, he'll get an OTP and he'll put that OTP in the given box, then only he'll be able to access the email that you have sent. And you can also disable download and forwarding in Gmail. When you are sending an email to your client and you don't want that it should be downloaded or it should be forwarded to somebody else, you can disable it. Though you cannot foolproof it, they can take a screenshot and send, but you can take some measures that are easily possible to do. Now the next part in the data handling or security protection is phishing. This is also very important thing. I'm disabling my video for some time. So what is phishing? So phishing is a way through emails. So you'll receive an email, the another person will pretend to be someone else. They will pretend that they are your bank, or they'll pretend that you have got some courier and you have to do certain things. And there's a request to click on a link in the email, or there's a request to download an attachment. When you click on that, then there is a risk. If you download that file, then it will infect your computer and you will become the victim of ransomware, because they will be having access to your system. So they'll be able to see what are the informations that you have on your system, what are the things that you have put into your personal website logins, or they can access your bank account, they can steal your identity. So, and they can also steal the client information from your system if you download that. So we have to be aware of. So if we are getting those kind of links, then try to avoid clicking on them if you are not sure about the credentials. Then there is security of the Wi-Fi that you have to do. So avoid using the Wi-Fi in public places, and you have to secure and protect your devices. Keep your Wi-Fi password protected. Again, you can keep your Wi-Fi password the way we said, that it should be alphanumeric, and you should use the symbols also. You can use uppercase and small case combination. And do not allow guests to use your Wi-Fi, especially when file sharing is on your system. And avoid using open access public Wi-Fi. And there is another one thing that is known as spoofed Wi-Fi. Like if you go to Cafe Coffee Day or any such places, then you'll find that there are few Wi-Fi available. In one there is written Cafe Coffee Day, another one there is written Cafe Coffee Day Greater Calaf, another one it is written that Cafe Coffee Day free. So you ask the manager that which one is the Wi-Fi that they have. So because if you are connecting to any spoofed Wi-Fi, then they can steal all the information that you are having on your device. There are few basic security tips that you should follow. You should ensure that you have up-to-date antivirus and anti-malware software. And it is also important that your browsers and operating systems are updated, because if they are security risks, then the browsers and operating systems are continuously upgrading themselves so that these weaknesses are not exploited by the hackers. Enable disk encryption. I'll come to this. What is disk encryption? And encrypt portable storage devices. So what is encryption and how do we do that? I'll come to that. Now, hardware end of life. If any of your hardware is getting retired, like your laptop has become old and you want to retire it, then it is important that you should remove the hard drive from your system or the storage device. If you are using a data card in your mobile, then you should remove that. So because even if you erase the data from your disk, it is not completely erased, and technical people can recover the files that are there in that disk or the data storage system. In that, there might be your pictures, there might be client data, there might be your personal identity information. So it is very important that you do not dispose of your devices without removing the storage systems of those devices. So this, then comes the physical security. You should lock your laptop and devices and you do not leave them unattended. You should password protect them, and you should not share the passwords with others if you are using that for clients. And you should try to keep minimal client data on your device. So if there are text and those things, then securely delete the messages at regular intervals. And you can have a data removal app in case your device is stolen. You can wipe the data. So if you see nowadays you have softwares to do that, and in the Apple devices they have already incorporated it. So you can access your device remotely. You can lock your device. You can remove the data or wipe the data in the device if it is stolen. And if you keep the printouts of passwords and other data, keep it locked away. So this is one more important thing that I would like to highlight. Like many people use iCloud, they use Dropbox and other things, and they automatically back up the files. So we have to ensure that these cloud services that store our records in cloud, if they are automatically backing up whether they are encrypted or not, means that the data is safe or not. If you have a cloud backup, ensure it is encrypted. Now, this is important thing, that is device encryption. Device encryption, I would like to simplify it. When there's device encryption, then you need a code so that the data that is converted into undecodable language can be decoded back and you can access the data. So device encryption converts all the data stored on your phone into a form that can only be read with correct credentials. These correct credentials are known as the encryption key, or in simple terms, we can call them the passwords. So these are better than the screen passwords, because the screen passwords that you are having on your devices can be broken with specialized knowledge, like there are use of recoveries, there are bootloaders. These are technical things and Android debugging things. So even if you have screen lock, then your device can be accessed. The data can be recovered from them. But if you have encrypted data on your devices, then without putting that encryption key, nobody will be able to decrypt the data and get the data in a form that is meaningful. So if you see, most of us are using Windows. So if you want to encrypt the data of your laptop in Windows, then there are few simple steps that you can use. So usually we have on our devices, usually we have mainly the administrator accounts, but some people have a different accounts for home and guest, those kind of accounts. So here it is important that you have to log in from your administrator account, and then from the start button, you'll go into setting, then you'll go into update and security, and then you'll go into device encryption. So it is important to find out whether your device supports the encryption or not, because some devices will not support the encryption. So if it is not supported, then you can use the standard BitLocker encryption in place of this encryption that I was talking about. So we'll discuss about that BitLocker encryption also. So if device encrypted is turned off, then you can turn it on. The method I have told you, that you'll go to the settings, then you'll go into the update and security, then device encryption, and then you turn it on if it is off. Now there is BitLocker, standard BitLocker encryption. So you have to sign into your Windows device with an administrator account, the way I was telling earlier, and you have to create a local or administrator account. These are the simple things initially that you have to do. Then in the search box, you type manage BitLocker and then select it from the results. And from the start button, Windows system, you go to the control panel. So simple is, even if you can type the control panel in it, in the search box, type the control panel, then you select the system and security, and then you go to BitLocker drive encryption, and then select manage BitLocker, and then you can turn it on. Now the important thing is here, like if you are using Windows Home, then you will not be able to do it. So what you will have to do, you will have to update your Windows. So you have to update it to at least Windows Professional. So there is a way to do that. In that you go to your system again, and then from there you select upgrade, and then in upgrade they'll ask you to pay some amount, and then you can upgrade. So if you are using Home Edition, you will have to upgrade to the Pro Edition. Then only you will be able to access the BitLocker. For Android handsets and tablets which are running Android 5, so if you talk about the new gadgets, most of the new mobiles have Android 5 or higher. So that's not a problem. Even the phones that came in last 4 to 5 years are having Android 5 or higher. So in that you have to go to the setting, and then you have to go to the personal, and then you have to go to the security. And here you should see an option to encrypt the phone or encrypt the tablet if you're using a tablet. And it is important, before encrypting your phone or tablet, you should plug your device into charging, because otherwise it may cause errors. Before this, I would like to highlight one more thing, that if you are encrypting your device or laptop or your mobile, whatever it is, the encryption key should be kept very safe. And if you forget this, then you will not be able to access the data in your device. So make sure that you do not forget the key, the encryption key, because otherwise your device will become unusable. Nobody else will be able to use it or open it for you. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Dhirendra, for that very insightful session and giving us all of these valuable information about telepractice and safety and security. We will be going into the Q&A section right now and look at some questions that people have asked. So, sir, our first question is from Gayatri Rao. Gayatri asks, the question was, does the client also have to download the software to connect for a session?
Yeah, in most of the cases, there are two ways. In some cases, they might have to download the software, and in some cases, it is on the browser itself, like Chrome or Windows Edge kind of things. So it is not necessary that they have to download the browser. It depends upon the platform that we are using, first thing. And second thing, even if they have to download the software, they don't have to pay anything, because it is from our side, and the platforms does not charge the clients for the same.
Good, sir. Gayatri, I hope that answers your question. Our next question is from Arun Mahapatra. Arun asks if you can tell him about any open source softwares. TerraSoft and other softwares you mentioned are paid or subscription based. So he's asking if there is a paid or subscription based software that they can use, or if there's any free software.
Yeah, if you're talking about the free softwares, then you can easily use the Google Meet. You can easily use Skype. You can easily use your Microsoft Teams. All of these are available freely, and nowadays these are encrypted, so you can use them. But if you want to go, if you want to be more sure about it, then sign a BA that I have already told you, Business Associate Agreement, so that provides you more safety. But as per Indian guidelines, you can easily use these openly free available softwares to connect with your clients. And in that also, I forgot to mention that you have to understand and pay attention to the convenience of your client also. If they are more comfortable with Google Meet, then you can use Google Meet. So you should make yourself conversant with different platforms if you are using free softwares. And you can increase the client convenience by using the platform that the client is convenient in.
Great, sir. We have a question from Sudhakar. Sudhakar asks, what minimum technology requirement do we need to suggest to clients for telepractice?
Okay, so when I was discussing about the operating systems and the internet speed and microphone and other things, the same kind of equipment would be required from the on the client side also. That is required from on our side, because if similar kind of equipments are not there, then the effectiveness will be compromised. And
Right.
here I have mostly discussed about the minimum requirements.
Right, sir. So we have time for one last question, which is from Dr. Velamuri. So Dr. Velamuri asks about the telecounseling guidelines by NIMHANS and where they can refer those guidelines.
Okay, so basically they want to access the guidelines.
Yes, sir.
Okay, they can simply write to NIMHANS, or they can send an email to any of the office bearers of IACP. We can also forward that. It's not a problem, because that is easily accessible in the public domain.
Great, sir. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you everyone for your questions. I would like to invite Dr. or even Dr. Kalpana to say a few words before we end today's session. Dr. Manoj?
I think before Dr. Manoj says vote of thanks, I will just say a few things, then he can thank the speaker and the audience. Dr. Dhirendra, you have very technically actually covered the topic, I would say, and such fine nuances you have shared that if people follow that, definitely it will help in the setting up the online office and the client work. I would say there are very technically know-how was of high level, which could have been done by the total engineering background to set up the office and keep complete practice as an ethical practice. So these inputs are very much required. If not in totality, even the part of it is being practiced, I'm very sure that we are safe in this particular domain when we are practicing as a psychotherapist or a counselor on, but on the web, on the online platforms. With that, I thought this was highly required on behalf of the IACP as a part of a skill. So that is why the relevance of the topic cannot be overemphasized. And over to Dr. Manoj to give.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Dhirendra, for sparing so much time and providing a lot of inputs in setting up this new generation psychotherapy practices, specifically in India, where it is very, very less used, and nowadays it is being now practiced more. So I especially put on record the thanks to the expert and the audience and our mental health professional who have attended this webinar, and it is I hope it is going to help them in setting up their own practices and going into a very ethical way. So thank you so much, Dr. Dhirendra, for providing such enough information for our members and mental health professionals. Thank you so much, Pearson, for their technical support in handling all these technical aspects in webinars, and they have been constantly supporting us in this way by providing technical support. So thank you, our president, ma'am, who could spare some time for us, and she is basically the torchbearer behind us, and she always focus us and that we should work more and more. So thank you for your encouragement and all this support. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Dr. Dhirendra, for giving us this session. And mainly, I want to thank all of our viewers for the strong interest in this webinar. I look forward to meeting you all for the next Pearson IACP webinar. Please check your emails for upcoming news on this. And with that, we end this session. I hope you all enjoyed this learning as much as we've enjoyed delivering this learning to you. Once again, thank you for sparing the time for this session, and have a great day.